What's up? Michael Gilley here from FloMarching. Joining us today on From the Tower is Andy Connors and Joe Hobbs of the Cavaliers. How's it going, Joe?
It's good. Good to be here.
So we're just going to kind of dive off into where we're at in the season right now. We're kind of in between seasons. We've got WGI just ended. They just had their percussion and color guard advisory board meetings in Vegas. We'll talk a little bit about that. And we're also going to dive off into DCI, which is the monstrosity that is all coming head on at us right
Absolutely.
now. It's everything's kind of heading that direction. So tell me what's going on right now in your neck of the woods.
Finished up the school year with Vanderbilt High School, so that's going, and then actually just got back from a weekend with the Cavaliers. So the Drumline just moved in this past weekend, so they've done a full week, and we said the full core moved in on Friday, and we had our first full weekend together, and are just cranking through music, cranking through drill. So
it's an exciting moment when the core comes together, I'm sure.
It is, and it's just great to see everybody. I was telling you guys earlier, we don't see the Drumline from January to April pretty much. Everyone's doing WGI now, so we set our line pretty much in January, and then we let them go, and then we come back in April, and fingers are crossed, everybody's ready to go. We do video stuff to kind of keep them going, and then we get into April, and then 2 weeks off, and then we're moving in. It's just crazy how fast it happens. You feel like you have all this time, and all of a sudden it's like boom.
Yeah, the marching band cycle, it's like never ending. We've definitely come to realize that pretty
quickly.
My wife would agree with that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
So,
how many of your students do WGI and DCI?
With Cavaliers?
Yeah.
Quite a few. I would say almost probably 60 to 70%.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Everyone's doing it. I mean, if you want to get, and you almost say when people audition now, if you want to make a top core, you need to be drumming year round.
Right.
You need to be doing this. And you need to get your ears developed. And WGI is blown up so much. And those groups are playing so well. I mean, as a teacher, you want your kids in those things.
Right.
You know what I mean? Those are the best kids. Those are the best players. So you want them doing WGI. You want them doing DCI. Just makes them a better player when they get to the summer.
I mean, it's with all sports, right? I mean, you see
Absolutely.
basketball, you have off season, they play select, the coaches want them, staying fit and active. So it's no different with percussion especially.
And one of the big things that we're seeing in sports today is a lot of parents are trying to force their kids to do just the one sport, and they're getting isolated into playing just football, just football, just football. But with WGI, BOA, and DCI, they're such different animals that it actually trains them to do different things. Much like playing baseball, football, basketball, all trains you to do different things, but they're all still athletic. You're all still musicians, but you're doing different things.
I think it just expands their vocabulary in the marching arts.
Definitely.
The WGI stuff, visual responsibilities and body are so incorporated now. You have to do that.
Oh, there's no way I could do some of the body.
Tell me about it. I just stand there with a mean face on and act like I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
But no, I mean, it gets them the ability when they get to the summer stuff, and it's not quite as involved with the body. There's still body, you have to do it. But their vocabulary and what they can and can't do is so much broader after doing WGI.
Yeah, for sure.
It just makes them better players. Yeah.
It is a big shift, though. I mean, obviously, WGI is inside and you're going to outdoor. So, do you do most of your camps outdoors from the beginning?
Well, it depends on the drum corps. In Chicago, Cavaliers, it's a little cold. Even this weekend was big jackets on.
Pioneer. That's a
little what it is, the Midwest.
Yes, absolutely. There's been camps in the snow before, so.
Yeah,
well, it did snow, right? The past 2 weeks, there's been a big snowstorm.
It was cold.
It was cold.
I was underprepared for what I brought clothes-wise to Chicago this past weekend. So, but we're outside. It's pretty rainy sometimes in the Midwest during this time of year. So, but you get outside as much as you possibly can, even if it is cold. You just got to get them outside. That's how your ears get trained. That's how you hear. That's how you get better.
For sure.
Yeah, having that different listening environments that you end up having, it's nuts. So, what do the Cabbies have in store for this summer? I mean, I know last year you guys made a magnificent push last year.
Yeah.
And it was kind of it was great to see the Cabbies kind of back in the placement, in the world that we've cherished them for being in.
Yeah.
So, what do they have up their sleeve this year?
It's tough. It's a tough question. I don't want to reveal all the stuff. I know the
Tell
designers,
us everything.
all the secrets. I will say this. I think, from 2015 to 2016, there was a huge change. Longtime program coordinator Scott Coder moved on, and Scott was huge for the Cavaliers. I think 98 to 2015 is how long Scott was with the Corps.
Jeez.
Scott's incredible, and I think the world of Scott. And So we moved from Scott, and now we brought in Dave McGrath, who was the brass caption last year as a program coordinator from Kennesaw Mountain, did a phenomenal job. Danny Wiles, Richard Henshaw from Avon, both did the visual stuff.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So there was a lot of design change. Some old faces, like Tommy Allen's been there for years with color guard stuff, Mike McIntosh, Alan Miller. So there's a lot of new, fresh design. And from what I've been told in those design meetings, it's just been a really positive experience. And those guys are excited. And I think last year's show came from that. Just a lot of people excited to do the activity and decided to come back. Like Danny Wiles is an old Cavalier. So a lot of guys that, came back to the core and are excited to kind of build it back up. And last year's show kind of, I don't know, they just seemed like they were excited. It seemed refreshed. And the core felt, to me, felt like a fresh core with a new look. The new uniform was different. We just almost trying to reinvent ourselves a little bit. And then this year, I think it really feels like we're carrying the momentum from last year into this year. So I think from a design standpoint, they're taking a lot of chances. They did the first year, now it's like, let's just do whatever. And I think, Men Are From Mars is the show. You're going to hear some Mars. You're going to hear some Frank Sinatra. You're going to hear a lot of different things all put on top of each other. We're going to do some new electronic stuff with some drums on the field all over the place. That's going to be cool. And I think I'm excited about it. I'm trying to think of the things that I can let you know without giving it all away.
There's this little thing called the game.
It is.
That is drum corps.
Well, you want that first show. When we come out of Indianapolis to the first big show of the year, you want there to be some surprise. You want the judges and the audience to kind of see it and be like, "Whoa, I didn't expect that."
Right.
You know what I mean? You want that to build up. But I think I could say this. I feel like the core is at a much better place than it was when we moved in last year. I think we're really continuing from 2016 and this year, and I think I'm really, really excited about what's going on.
A lot of times it is about building momentum.
Absolutely.
And taking things that you've done in the past and just continuously pushing that forward and building on that, And then, it goes without saying, with what Blue Coats did last year, they really did kind of open the box. They opened Pandora's box, so to speak, on what you can do. And I imagine you guys looked at it and said, "Oh, okay. Well, now it's gloves are off. Here we come." So
yeah, it was great to see because Blue Coats did take a different route. No helmets, it's a totally different uniform, a different look. Got ramps on the field, and you look at that like, man, the possibilities are endless.
Right.
And I think our designers at Cavaliers, I don't know if they were inspired by that or not. I can't speak for them.
Right.
But I think they can say they're just truly excited, and the ideas that was given to me, I was like, well, I've never heard that before. I've never seen anybody do that. That's awesome. Let's do that. I can say what's this for a battery? I know there'll be a lot of splits in the snow and the quad line. I can tell you that coming up the weekend. We're really trying to push that. I can say it because I'm losing more hair as I teach it. We're going through it, and it was just.
Well, being an old snare drummer, like you don't want to split stuff, or that's just the way we used to. The way we used to think about it was like, no, snares don't split things.
But I would say, like from WGI, I mean, there were a lot of groups that's kind of coming in, and we're going to try and push that a little bit. I know our second movie, there are 5 episodes to the show. Our second episode has got a lot of windows for the percussion. That's kind of something we're going to try and do, and a new trick, and trying to push the limit on that a little bit more with things you haven't seen before.
That's awesome. And what I like, especially about last DCI season, is that it seems like the risks are accepted in the community. Like people aren't like pushing back or like saying that it's too far to the left or right. It's like people are taking it for what it is and like appreciating the artistic value of it.
I think you're always going to have those people that know what it was like when they marched.
Right.
I'm like, you still get on Drum Corps Planet every now and then, and you'll see like,
never a good idea.
When I marched, we didn't have all this electronics and all this stuff, and you just kind of.
There's still people wanting to go back to like 2-valve horns.
Absolutely, so. and I get that too. I mean, there were some things that I liked about when I marched, that maybe aren't done as much anymore.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, I think you're right. It's really refreshing and incredible to see all the new ideas that are happening, and it does feel like the gloves are off. And designers can really do what they want to do and push the limit, and they're getting rewarded for pushing the limit.
Right,
which is huge.
And that it's still based in like the traditional aspects of it. I know I've touched on this before, but like it's not that they're throwing what it used to be out the window. It's adding onto it and using it as like a stepping path.
Well, it's something like with Cavaliers this year. That's kind of cool that you put it that way. We're doing this kind of pushing the limit show with Men Are From Mars, but at the same time, at the core, you're going to hear the Mars lick in there over and over again, which is a classic Cavalier lick. It
is a Cassie. Well, it was a 95, right?
95, yeah.
I mean,
so it's like that's
one of the all-time favorite drum corps shows.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when I hear the arrangement and I hear them play, like even as an alumni of myself, like I hear that, I'm like, that's cool. there's a tip of the cap. It's something brand new and fresh, but we're also borrowing something that's old that everyone recognizes. It's a huge identity to the core. And I think it's really neat how they put that together. And it
resonates with the alumni from every single year, not just that year that they performed Mars. It resonates for all of the Cavaliers.
Well, that's how we, after a show, that's how we get the members to come back to the buses. No joke, is the bus horn does
really?
Dun, 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 and that's how everybody, so it all comes back, like everyone that marches the Cavaliers knows that lick and knows what that lick means.
That's awesome.
So, which is kind of cool.
Wow. Yeah, just listening to what you're talking about, hearing the idea of the percussion aspect of the show, hearing the Mars are coming back. Frank Sinatra's the man. Like, you can't go wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's going to be...
Well, I want to give it a... I think you'll be intrigued to hear how they use both of those pieces.
How they interweave them?
Yeah, that's coming up, and I think, we'll start working on that next week. We got most of the show musically is done.
Oh, wow.
And I think they're trying to get about 90 to 100 charts done by the end of this weekend. So I fly back in on the weekend, and I'm anxious to see, fingers crossed, we're trying to get the first 3 episodes marching and playing on the field by Sunday. So with weather permitting, we'll see what happens. The Midwest is always a crapshoot.
So you have that much already on the field, or you're going to be having it on the field. So how much do you focus on basic block? I know these kids come in and they're the top of the level, so they kind of don't need as much as say a high school group would need. So how much are you focusing on fundamentals?
That's a great question. It's funny. I feel like sometimes I put myself in that mentality these kids don't need it. But I always look back on the seasons that were good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
And the bad ones you just don't want to skip the step.
Right. And it's because everyone's steps can be so different. We all walk our own to the beat of our own drum, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So in high school, my director could have taught differently than yours. So is it hard to get those kids in the group and learn the Cavalier style?
Yes and no. I think it depends on what year. And when I say this year in particular, I feel like we were able to take kids that played the way we wanted them to play as they came to the core. Some years you get a grab bag of students that drum very different ways or do things very differently, and you're like, okay, this kid's extremely talented, but he doesn't necessarily play the way I want him to play.
Mm-hmm. And
then you've got to morph them into the system. This year we were really fortunate. I felt like we had a lot of guys that auditioned that already played the way we wanted them to play. The visual stuff I think is a little more tricky because the way you march in indoor is so different than what you do for the outdoor.
Right.
Yeah.
And those really don't almost compare.
Right.
And the Cavalier marching technique is so unique in its own. It's just something they've been doing for years. So I think the visual guys probably have a harder time with that, do a lot of basics. I know this past weekend, visual was pretty much all fundamentals.
Okay.
I think the drumming stuff this past week when they moved in was all exercise program with a little bit of music at the end, just trying to get everyone on the same page and just make sure technically, we get to the music, we can say this is exactly like this exercise, or they can connect the dots between the warm-up book and the music. So,
and they're at such a high level, they're practicing at home. You don't have that problem of where they come and they're like, no, music.
And if they do, we say thank you very much, and we'll
have a good
we'll
summer.
See you next year.
Yeah.
You and I. It's but you can and you have to be.
Right.
It's so competitive now. Drum corps. It always was, but it just feels like it's more and more every year. And the core was 5th last year, and we're trying to move up.
Right.
We just don't have time for that. And these members know that, and they come to the Cavaliers or a top 5 drum corps because they want to be the best.
Right.
So typically they know what that takes and know what that means. So we really don't have to worry about them, wanting to try, to practice.
Right.
They're practicing their butts off. They're working as hard as they can because they want to be the best.
And sometimes it's students who just want to go to the camps just to get the experience, just
Absolutely.
so that they know, oh, this is where I have to be at next year when I come back around.
Absolutely.
And one thing that you kind of touched on was when we were marching, we're kind of old dogs, but there was West Coast, there was East Coast, there was the kind of Midwest styles of drumming, and you could literally look at a guy's hands and be like, oh, you came from this school of thought. And then with the advancement of things like YouTube and seeing everybody in Facebook and seeing guys drum on stuff that regionalism, I guess that's right. It sounds
good to
right.
me. Yeah.
The regionalism of drumming has kind of gone away, and you don't see the true West Coast versus East Coast kind of thing anymore. It's just kind of everybody has their thing. So what's it like teaching that now versus when we were going through it back in the day?
What I think too, what contributed to that was, you used to have teachers that would stay with the drum corps for 10, 15 years.
Right.
Like Ralph Hardiman was with Vanguard for forever. You know what I mean? And everyone kind of created their styles. And now, for better or worse, you see a lot of arrangers or teachers moving around a lot. And the technique, I guess we are older, maybe this dates me, but when I think of Vanguard, my original thought is of the Casella years.
Yeah,
in the late 90s.
Kind of the molar.
The molar and the wrist moved, and then, and then Riddick moved over. But kids I teach now, like at the high school level, when I say Vanguard, they think Riddick. They don't think about that technique.
Right.
So the identity of West Coast, East Coast with the teachers even has completely changed. And now it's like, like I said, when I think of Vanguard, I think it's something totally different than a 16-year-old does right now. Same with Cavaliers even. Cavaliers...
I think of the old
Jim Campbell, Brett Kuhn
lines where it was kind of mechanical, but it was so precise. It was just so visually clean. I was just like, wow.
Because Brett was there through the 80s and the 90s. It was almost 20 years. And Jim Campbell the same
They were
thing.
the machine,
That was it. But then you saw Casella came to Cavaliers, and that changed the technique.
And that was wildly different.
And I was there for both those. I had a really great experience. I got to march the Brett years. Or the end of the Brett year, 04, 05, and then Jim and his crew came in 06. I got to learn both of those, which was cool. But once again, it tore down that line of this is the way the Cavaliers play, or it came West Coast, whatever you want to call it. You know? And now it's back to for a couple years it went back to the the old Cavalier style. Now it's kind of a hybrid of that. If we had to put a technique on it, but the teaching has moved so much too that now the cores. They're not the West Coast core. You've got people from the Midwest teaching on the West Coast, or vice versa, and it just changes everything.
Oh, and even within the lines themselves, with Rennick's lines, I mean, he doesn't necessarily focus in on, okay, your angle of your hand has to be just exactly like the guy next to you. He wants each individual player to play well, play with good sound quality, and blend with the guy next to you. He really doesn't care necessarily what it looks like. Does it sound like the guy next to you?
Yeah.
Cool, great. Moving on.
And no one's better. I mean, I don't know him very well, and I don't want to speak for him, but I can say no one, the clarity these lines produce is just, it's unmatched. It's so consistent. Tip of the cap to that guy every year. It's pretty mind-blowing how well they play.
Well, I'm really excited to see what you guys are going to do this year. Seeing that blend of music, seeing what you guys are going to kick off. The Green Machine, it sounds like they are back and ready to go. So.
We feel good about it. I'm always cautiously optimistic. You just never know. Seasons are so crazy. When you think you have this, it just changes. But we're all excited. I mean, the show sounds great, and the guys came in really, really well prepared. And we're excited about 2017. So
let's dive off into a little bit of the WGI world. They just had the percussion advisory boards stuff, and you do a little bit of judging in the spring. First off, what's it like judging an indoor line? What's
hard.
It's loud, I'm sure.
Loud. Well, it's because when you teach so much, and there were years, I don't know if I was notorious for it, but there were years I would go into critique and I was a little fiery. You know what I mean? And you hold this judge at this giant standard of how dare you give my group this number, or this, you missed the whole thing. How did you do that? And then you start judging more, and you're like, they're just trying to get it right. At least that's where I stand. When I judge, it's hard. You just want to get the numbers right. You want to get the spread right. You want to get the group that should be up. And you're just trying to give them good feedback and trying to be educational in the process. So there's an immense amount of pressure I feel when I judge, because you just want, because you've been that designer, that put the show together. You've been that person on the floor playing, and you just want to make sure that you're giving them what they need to be successful. Even if the number's not right, you're trying to build them up and teach them through judging.
And let's face it also as well, too, we're all really close. We're all friends. And
that's tough, too. And you have students now, like I judged in the circuit, and I think the top 2 or 3 groups in open class were all guys that I taught. So it's really hard, because you want to help them, and you want to, empower them to an extent. Right. And it's just, so it's difficult. You're just trying to balance all the plates and make sure you get the numbers right in, but it's tough. It's real tough.
So kind of going off that, I know they had one proposal that kind of went into judges being taught the correct ways to do it, or the length of time that you had to judge to actually get into the circuit. I think it was proposal number 12. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I'm actually talking a little bit. I don't judge for WGI yet, but I know I understand why it was proposed for sure. I mean, like I said, you put so much time and so many resources into these groups. You want to make sure that the adjudication is doing it correctly. You know what I mean? Like you want to make sure that the WGI is putting in as much time to the training of the judges as you are putting into designing your show.
That's a great way to put it.
And I think it seems as though, I wasn't at those meetings, but it seems as though that's kind of what they're asking, is that we just want to make sure that we're getting the best adjudication possible, and that makes total sense. And from DCI too, something I do more of now, I hope the same thing. I hope that my sunburn, and when I walk in and I'm red and I'm sweating, that all the heart and that I put into that group that day, that the judge who reads that is giving me the best possible read, and has the best intentions and is trying to get it correct. So I completely understand why that's there for sure.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that was brought up out of the meetings was the introduction of winds into the percussion from a design standpoint. I think the rationale behind that was, in the color guard side of things, you can add musical tracks, and you can use winds, and you can use percussion to enhance the color guard show. In winds, you can use percussion to enhance, and you can use color guard to enhance the winds show itself. And then in percussion, you're now starting to add winds into the percussion world. It's kind of confusing when you start wrapping it all around.
It's one big triangle.
But now that you've added, where do you think that's going to lead the activity towards?
It's exciting. I think every time something like this passes, I think it's exciting. I think of lighting. What was that? I think for 2012 or 2013 when lighting came in. The designers I knew that were involved in the activity were just excited. Like, here's the possibilities are more open. And I think for me, I'm excited to see who comes out and uses it in the best possible way, and then that'll steer the activity another way. Lighting was so revolutionary that year. And so I remember Rhythm X's and Light and Show, which was really cool. Mystique had a really cool light thing in the back, and it just pushed the activity. And I think the same thing with this. We'll see some groups do it probably really, really well. Some groups not do it as well, and people will learn how it works and how to involve it in their show in a really effective way. And I think it opens it up. It's exciting to me as an audience member to watch it.
And you actually brought up a good point, was as a percussion judge, now that a wind player is standing out in front of you playing a flute solo, now you're going to have to kind of switch your mindset from,
absolutely,
okay, hey, that's a great marimba run. Ooh, now the flute, okay, what's my old theory classes say about flute playing?
Well, yeah, and like I said, I would assume they talked about that in the meeting on how that's going to be adjudicated. I know those guys do a really good job, and I know at the heart of WGI, it really seems that they want it to be educational, and they want to get it right. They seem very passionate about that. Caleb Rothy and all those guys that put that together, I know they're very passionate about doing it right. So I'm sure the discussion's been had, but yeah, are you asking a percussion guy to talk about articulation and tone and pitch on a flute solo if it happens to happen, and how do you do that, and how does that sheet evolve to do that? And it's going to take some time, I would assume, to make sure that it's done correctly. And once again, like we said before, that the judging is judging the way it needs to judge. That's a lot of judges in one sentence. But you know what I mean, being effective.
Right.
So I wonder if maybe adding a judge who would be able to, a wind judge to the percussion panel in case they do have that.
Yeah.
Or having a color guard judge to to these different things, because you're seeing color guard stuff in all three of the different worlds, whether it be dance or anything else. Would it be needed to have a judge who's more not necessarily that you're less qualified, but who's more specialized in those different spaces, and add them to the panels so that they can critique those performers?
And I think you look at the championship panel, and I know there are guys on that panel that are pretty well versed, like Scott Coder, which we talked about earlier.
Right.
Scott's usually judging GE to some extent. Great musician, band director. Joe Allison, I know, was on those panels. Another band director. So you've got a few in there, and I'll be curious to see how they morph, that panel into including, so they can accurately judge that. I'm sure there's a plan, but it's intriguing. It's interesting to see how that's going to come about.
So it's an exciting time, because these are going to be the foundational steps for something in 10 years. It's going to, we didn't even imagine. And
absolutely,
we're setting that up now. And like you said with lights in 2012, and this year, the usage of lights and all of that was amazing. I know I saw some percussion groups that had full TV sets, 5 huge screens that just was so captivating. And that's only been 5 years now. So
5 years, and you think about 2017 just happened. I mean, think about 2007 and what was happening in the activity.
Yeah.
You know, the show that sticks out for me, and I know I'm biased because all my friends, and I taught there for a couple of years, was Music City Mystique, and how much body was in that show. And like that was the first show that everyone's like, I've got to do body now. Yeah. Like I've got to put a
like
ton
you have to
have
it.
To changed it, and that was just 10 years ago. And now, if you don't have extended phrases of body in your show, you're not going to place well on the visual sheet. You have to have that, that additional responsibility. It's in DCI too.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have that's compulsory now that you're required to really do. So it's crazy. It's moving really fast.
Yes, it is.
So do not envy you when it comes to judging, especially these.
It's tough,
especially these quality of players, like especially the younger ones. Scholastic A even is now drumming at a level that they weren't doing that.
It's unbelievable what they're capable of.
They weren't doing that.
And I think since past WGI, like I think about the high school job I have now, and what we are done with by 6th grade. Is just laughable. You know what I mean? Like some of the stuff I'm afraid to tell any student this, like in the Murmur literature that they're playing in high school is graduate level pieces. I mean, it's incredible what they're doing, and it's just, but I mean, when we grew up, the literature wasn't there as much. And now there's just so much more material coming up. Technology has made it easier to write. There's
easier to learn, easier to discuss teaching techniques.
There's so much material for a student. If you're a student right now, there's just so much material, like you talked about earlier. There's YouTube. There's books you can buy. You can get music online now from most publishers. Yeah. I mean, we used to order it and wait a week for it to come in. Like it's all at their fingertips. And if you really, it's just incredible to be a student this time, I think.
I remember being a sophomore in high school, and my instructor walked in with a stack of videotapes, old VHS tapes of old Santa Clara lines, old BD lines, old drum lines from wherever, like lines I couldn't even recognize, old Velvet Night lines. And he was literally just watch and learn. And then he handed me another 3-inch ring binder of old exercise, and it was just go and learn.
It was like bootleg. It was like,
oh, dude, you would fight.
The underground market to get those licks in. No, I'm serious. And
no, it was. But you would fight with people to be like, nope, I want my videotape back. No, because I still got to go learn that other thing. And you would fight with the other guys.
I remember, I'm sure we were the same age, that BD video from the mid-'90s. It had 95, 96, 97 on it. I mean, I wore that thing out on VHS. I mean, I just watched it. I remember just religiously.
I think I had a funeral out in the backyard when my '94 tape died.
It was your access to it. You didn't have. It's just so much harder to get material then, and that what you did have, you just cherished and you just watched on, over and over and over again. And now it's, I want to see any line from any time pretty much. I can get on YouTube and see. 94 Blue Nights. I want to see it. I can pull it up. I can see anything that I want on there. It's pretty cool. So. And
now when you actually are moving or whatnot, and you find those old stacks of that music, and you're like, oh, I can't play that anymore.
Or the VHS tapes that just sit there because you can't even buy a VCR anymore.
That's true. I've tried.
So what's going to be the best way for folks to check out Cabbies this year and follow those guys on whatever? What's going to be the best way to hold on to them?
We have a really incredible social media team at Cavaliers, and something we just had meetings about. So Cavaliers.org is great. There's an Instagram. I think each section actually has their own Instagram. So there's a Cavaliers Percussion Instagram. I think there is a Snapchat as well. So the website is huge. DCI.org, obviously. And then throughout the summer, we'll be on tour. I think that full schedule is online. So you can kind of see, check out the shows we're at and come see it.
What's the first show?
The first show is in mid to late June. I want to say off the top of my head, I'm gonna misquote it, so I'm not gonna say. But it's towards the end of June, and it's usually Indianapolis.
Okay.
Was it the tour premiere?
It's a tour premiere, yeah.
I think that's June 22nd.
June 22nd.
Yeah.
So, and that's the big, that's always fun because it gives you this really hard deadline.
Right.
Like right now, drum corps is hard, especially if you March. That end deadline, you have one in the end of June, early July is pretty tough. It's kind of this ambiguous. What are we doing? We have a show every night. And then you hit regional season, and so it's really clear deadlines. But so we're excited to build towards that because it's always great for the guys. And like I said, they know the 22nd, we got to be ready to go. Yep. So it should be fun.
Well, it's always a nice end of the spring training, too. Spring training's a grind. And knowing that when you hit that show, you're like, cool, great.
And they go so long now. We do, it's pretty much a full month of pre-tour rehearsal. And it's just, it's brutal on those guys. And they push through. But also it's some of the most rewarding times.
Yeah, it is.
Just making it through it, so.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
And have a great summer. I'm sure we're going to see you around.
So for Michael Gilley Andy Connors and Joe Hobbs. This has been From the Tower, and we'll see you guys next time.